Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third of our webinar series, Copper Matters, which we being hosted by CRU together with TESCO. I'm Alejandra Wood and would like to invite you to follow these regular webinars, which under COVID-19 times will enable you to connect to industry leaders and learn about this sector's key developments. Today's session will be focused on running mining operations under COVID-19 through a conversation with Daniel Malchuk, President Minerals Americas BHP. We will have the opportunity of Q&As by using the Slido application. I invite you to click on the pop-up displayed on your screen and use the hashtag CUMatters. You may also use the same hashtag CUMatters and CRUCopper for social networks. We will also run a poll during the webinar and will show and discuss the results by the end of the session. We have an hour, so we hope we can address as many questions as possible. And last but not least, I want to give a big thank you to our sponsors for today, Elecmetal. Now let me introduce Daniel. He was appointed President Copper at BHP in March 2015. Previously, he was the president of Aluminium and Manganese and Nickel Business, and prior to that, the president of Minerals Exploration. He worked for the company between 1996 and 1998 in BHP Copper in the USA and has held a number of roles in the base metals business since he rejoined BHP in 2002. Daniel has a civil industrial engineering degree and a Master's of Business Administration from UCLA. Despite the eruption of COVID-19 since the beginning of March this year, copper mining industry in Chile has been able to keep its operational continuity by imposing a number of new health and safety protocols and proactively working with local authorities, suppliers, and communities. This has resulted in the fulfillment of production targets throughout all the big players and also in positioning the industry as a resilient one, contributing to sustaining the macroeconomic figures of our country on their way down as a consequence of the fight against the pandemic. Daniel, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Alex.
Well, Daniel, you are knowledgeable in leading different minerals operations in different geographies. How have you experienced the last 5 months at being at the head of minerals operations in the Americas?
Well, BHP, as you know, is a global company, and we've certainly seen the impact of the pandemic across our different locations. We've also seen the impacts firsthand here in the Americas, in this region. Personally speaking, I found the last 5 months extremely challenging, but also very rewarding. I'm very proud of our people and some of the things that we have achieved during this period, in spite of all the challenges that we're facing. In terms of our operations, we've seen quite different impacts across different jurisdictions. And in part because of the spread of the virus in different locations. But we also due to differences in the responses done by governments, as well as the maturity of the mining industry in the different locations. Also, there is a big difference, and we were deeply focused, as you've seen probably based on what we've done in Chile, and then the vision of social value. We have managed to really display our strategy in social value, and the company and led us to look at 360 degrees of how to contribute to society in accordance to the mining industry, government authorities, and our communities and our workers. So let me give you a couple of examples in terms of what we've seen in the different locations. Obviously, in Chile, as you've said in your introduction, we've managed to maintain, operational continuity with the primary focus on the health and well-being of our workers. and of our workforce. But what's been quite remarkable is the maturity of the Chilean mining industry. Is something that I think that we need to be very proud of. The response from the industry has been very good. Brazil, which we have, as you know, the Samarco operations in association with BADE. That's been probably one of the hardest hit countries in the region. I mean, it's just to look at the statistics. And we've been forced to slow down or suspend some of the activities that we've been doing, particularly the associated with the restart of Samarco and some of the remediation work associated with the dam failure. Peru and Colombia also quite challenging places in terms of COVID-19. In both locations, we've had to suspend operations for a while, in case of Antamina and Cerrecon. In both operations, about between 4 to 6 weeks. And we took that time to really focus on enhancing the controls and making sure that everything was in the right place before we actually restart again, putting as a first priority the health and well-being of our workforce. We've also seen some impacts in North America, where under my responsibility I have the Janssen project in Canada and also the Resolution joint venture in Arizona. In case of Canada, there were some restrictions, much like other parts of the world, in terms of the ability for people to travel across regions. So we had to suspend some of the activities there.
Very interesting. I guess we will have the chance to go over this maturity of our industry here in Chile along this conversation. What effects do you think social distancing, Daniel, will have both in mine operating costs during the worst part of the pandemic and the lockdowns, and afterwards, while we move to this sort of new normal?
Look, I think it's a bit too early to forecast future impacts. I think that we still really don't know exactly how things may play out in the future. Having said that, it's quite likely that the industry will face some pressures as a result of the pandemic. We know for sure that there have been some additional costs directly associated with managing the pandemic. For example, transport costs and all the controls that we put in place in our sites. There have been some impacts, obviously, in some of the maintenance activities that we have to do, in the way we do it, with reduced number of people, etc. And obviously, any impacts in production will have an impact on cost. But it's not all bad news, actually. We've learned quite a few things, good things, during the pandemic, and we've learned, and I guess something we knew before, but it got confirmed during this period of time, the importance of flexibility. So, for instance, you may be aware that we have a Center of Integrated Operations, which are an area that manage some of the areas of the mine remotely. That has given us greater flexibility with our Escondida and Spence operations here in Chile. And also, I see some positives. I guess the pandemic has forced us to reevaluate the way we work. We've needed to prioritize, simplify, consider new ways of doing things and new technologies. And I hope this crisis will help encourage us to make the changes we need for the future of mining. Some simple examples. I mean, about a week ago, I had the pleasure to witness some of the important milestones in our SGO operation in Spence. Sitting here from my study at home, people, wearing these devices like GoPros or something like that, and in their helmets, they were able to actually broadcast an important milestone in the project, which is the turn of the mill, the first turn of the mill, and that technology has been used by some of our vendors to actually check on the delivery of some of the equipment. And so, I don't know, a vendor representative sitting in, I don't know, Sweden can actually look at what's going on in the operation at Spence. So there obviously some positives and negatives. I mean, yes, there's been additional cost, but also I think that this pandemic has allowed us to actually learn a few new tricks that I hope that will continue even after the pandemic.
Well, good to have some good news and the current times. Now, recently, BHP announced a significant drop in fiscal year 2021 copper production. It would be interesting to know to what extent this is driven by COVID-19 and how specifically.
Yeah, as we stated in our operational review, COVID-19 has have some impact in our fiscal year 21 production forecast. So for the attendance to this session, I mean, obviously our fiscal year starts 1st July. So at the BHP level, our copper production for the fiscal year 2020 was slightly higher than the prior year, but we expect that during fiscal year 2021, the volumes will be slightly lower. And essentially, this is driven by the reduction of our operational workforces. We've been quite transparent with the market, saying that, I mean, it varies week by week, but essentially we face, anywhere between 30 to 40% reduction in the workforce compared to the normal levels that we had, say, back in February. We know that the industry, and that obviously includes our assets, have been operating with significantly reduced workforce, and since the start of the pandemic, and obviously that reduction has some impact in terms of the things that we can do, things that we've had to delay, things that we have to change the way they get done. Those are things that will impact production, but the thing that is quite difficult actually to forecast is the level of absenteeism going forward. That is much harder to forecast, but suffice to say that we do have some levels of absenteeism built in our planning for fiscal year 21. It's important to say that mining is and will continue to be a long-term business. So no matter what are the decisions we make in the short term, we must keep an adequate balance between navigating this contingency and moving forward with the projects and decisions and activities that will impact the mining in the future. We always need to keep in mind that this is a long-term business and must be managed like that.
So you're implying that because of this reduced workforce, there might be an impact in production for this fiscal year?
Well, the impact in production is built in the guidance that we already provided to the market. As I said, I mean, that impact in production, when you compare the numbers to fiscal year 2021 against fiscal year 20, is slightly lower. And that is as a result of what we believe will impact this reduced workforce in the operation.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned at the beginning how resilient or how sort of prepared was or mature was the Chilean mining industry to face this crisis. So, and locally it's been said that the mining sector has been resilient towards its operational continuity during the pandemic. Do you agree with this statement that the mining sector has been resilient during this period?
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that statement. In fact, I think that the industry has led the way in this area. A key objective for us has been to demonstrate that operational continuity is actually compatible with the health and the safety of our people, and I think that we've been fairly successful, and that because that's always been our first priority. This is a responsibility that we take very seriously, and so we recognize the critical employment of both aspects separately. So that is the health and safety of our workforce, but also the contribution that we make to the economy, to the world economy. Actually, I mean, you just need to look at the numbers here in Chile or in other parts of the world, the massive economic impact that this pandemic has created. So we feel the responsibility of be able to continue operating and continue to provide, and we also understand the multiplier effect that this industry has with many other areas in the economy. We also understand the tension that sometimes, may create this situation about, the health and safety and the operational continuity. But we feel that with the controls that we put in place, that things have been managed, very well. In fact, I'm coming back now from the operations here in Chile. I was there the first part of the week, and I had the opportunity to witness firsthand all the controls that have been put in place. And I feel, talking to the people and in looking, the controls, I feel that the situation has been managed quite well. I think that this industry has navigated well through this crisis and has done that by displaying the best attributes that we're known for. Good planning, sound analysis, and disciplined execution. These are not times to celebrate, to be honest, but times to recognize the strengths that we built in as an industry. Another aspect that actually would be important to mention is actually our culture, and that's very important in BHP. And despite all the challenges that we face, and we understand that this has not only challenges on the work side of things, but also on the personal side of things. The response from our people, the on-site, the people from our offices, everywhere, people working from home, etc., has been admirable. Really, the level of commitment that we've seen in our people has been absolutely remarkable. So I'm very, very proud of the BHP workers and how they kept working under very, very difficult conditions. What we have achieved so far wouldn't have been possible without our people. Our people are really demonstrated that they are, when they're empowered and are willing to collaborate and participate in the solutions. In fact, many of the solutions that we put in place in the operations have been, suggested, recommended by our own people.
By the same people. So let's go. I would like you to comment on these controls. You say you're coming back from sites now, a visit to sites, and you've mentioned some time ago that there were around 100 measures or controls implemented during this period. So I think it would be interested in you commenting some of them, and maybe which were the most difficult to adopt.
So let me start by explaining. We've been progressively implementing some controls here. Okay, we started as everyone else to demobilize people, and we have significantly reduced the number of workers on site. I mentioned before. Sometimes we are 30% less, sometimes we're 40% less, compared against the numbers we had back in February, say. We have demobilized different type of people. Obviously, we the first universe of people that we demobilized were these workers that had in the high risk conditions because of either age or some medical preconditions. But also we've been, as part of the controls, we've been demobilizing obviously every suspects of COVID. And also we've been reducing some of the non-essential activities on site. The 100 measures that you referred to are related to all the health and hygiene measures that we put in place, particularly in the dining halls, in the way that we organize our camps, the way that we transport our people, etc., etc. The third element is basically we've been followed what was being recommended by the World Health Organization in terms of these three pillars of testing, tracing, and isolation. So on testing, we've done a number of tests. We're now testing pretty much everyone with rapid tests, and we follow up with PCRs. I got the numbers somewhere. I'll give you the numbers in a minute. But and also we've been tracing. We've been using an app that can be downloaded and in your phone, and actually will help us to actually trace people when there is a suspect of COVID. We also have put in place, as many other of our peer companies, some of these sanitary hotels with capacity for hundreds of people, and we've been using them for the last 3 months. So anyone who's not from the region that has either contracted the virus or is a close contact and suspect of someone who has contracted the virus can stay in these sanitary hotels, and we provide all the health assistance and everything for the 14 days of the quarantine period. So that's the other aspect. And the last aspect, I guess, to highlight is the dynamic response to the pandemic. We are constantly updating our thinking and decisions in response to the way the pandemic evolves. And we monitor all the information, such as testing results, hospital capacity in the regions, and at the national and at the regional level, to inform the way that we make our decisions. You've seen that we've made some decisions of not moving, for instance, regional people in the Tarapacá region when the situation up there was really in critical condition. So, look, again, at BHP, the health and safety of our people is at the core of all the decisions we make. And there's a number. I mean, I can bore you guys, for hours with all the controls that we put in place. As I always joke now, I now run a logistic company, not a mining company, because the number of things that we have to put in place in a very short period of time, by the way, but it's working pretty well. And actually the numbers, if you look at the numbers, they really back us up, because we've had, I mean, I know that there was some commentary there that the mining industry had too many cases. When you compare that to the total population, actually that's not true. We've had a lower incidence of cases, and in fact, in the last 4 to 6 weeks, since we've incorporated a massive testing approach, we've been finding way more asymptomatic people than symptomatic. So the very few symptomatic people, that means that our system of going out at testing, we have testing facilities in 14 places in Chile that people voluntarily go during the weekends just before they come on site, and they get tested. And if they show positive in the rapid test, then we follow up with the PCR. I think I got the numbers here. We've applied so far approximately 80,000 tests, 70,000 rapid tests, and about 10,000 PCRs in the last, I guess, 2-3 months. So it's quite a massive effort, and we have so far 143 cases to date, of which 363 correspond to a symptomatic case, and most of them, by the way, in the last 4 to 6 weeks. So far today, in the active cases, we have more than half of them are asymptomatic. So we proactively go and try to find them. So yeah, it's been an interesting learning period.
I guess so. Amazing numbers. Do you think that some of these controls, Daniel, will become a new practice for the industry in terms of health?
Yeah, look, I think it's no one really knows how long this pandemic will last, but we're planning on the basis that it will last for a while. I don't think that this is, I mean, it was very clear that this is not something that will come and go very quickly. We continue to be very vigilant in terms of the controls, and in fact, those are some of the messages that I gave to the people on site earlier this week. I mean, we can lower our guard. I think that this is the time to continue using, as I mentioned before, the characteristics that we have as an industry in terms of the discipline execution. I think that we need to continue to stay vigilant, and I think that yes, may well change the way we work going forward. The good news is that we've managed to find a way to work around that, and in fact, people are getting used to that after obviously the initial effort that we had to make. Now people are feeling quite comfortable with all these controls.
Now, I would like to move to project. The slowdown of Sven's growth option was announced in April this year. And which are the main challenges for project construction under these circumstances, and how can they be addressed?
Yeah, so look, the pandemic arrived just right after the peak of the construction phase for SGO. I mean, obviously our main project is SGO. just arrived at the peak of the construction phase. So we unlike other projects in the industry, we made the decision to continue on, but obviously made also a decision, as I mentioned earlier, to significantly reduce the number of people on site. And in the case in the project environment, that has different implications because of the number of people that you require. I mean, I don't have the exact number in my head, but from memory, I think that back in February there must have been 7,000 people, 6,000 people on site. So when we were, I was there about 3-4 weeks ago. We had 3,500, and earlier this week I was told there's like 2,500. So it's quite a large number of people, and we had to be particularly focused on the project and impose a number of restrictions. And probably the most material of these restrictions is the fact that the restriction to have single occupancy in our camp, which obviously had an impact in the number of people that we could have on site. To achieve that, we had to obviously reduce the intensity and slow down the progress of some of the activities. Now, interesting, the productivity has been quite good, which is again another learning from the pandemic. I think that, as I mentioned before, this pandemic has showed us that there are different ways to do things. And the other impact that we've had is our ability to bring international experts, particularly during the commissioning phase. I mean, vendors, representatives, etc. And that we obviously been restricted to bring them. But we've managed other ways to do that through technology. So hasn't been that much of an impact. I'm pleased to say that at the end of July, we had the first commissioning test with load in the material handling system. We're now testing the milling system and the flotation test. So the project is actually tracking along quite well. These delays or these changes in the program had made a delay in regard to our original plan of when we were expecting the first copper. We told the market already that we expect that the first production was going to happen between December this year and March of 2020.
Okay. So how okay, so let's move forward. And now I would like to invite the audience to participate in a poll. And the poll is the following. Will COVID-19 push national governments to A, make conditions more attractive for foreign investment in mining, B, impose higher socio-environmental regulations due to increased sustainability demands? Please go ahead and click on one of the options, and we will share these results by the end of the session. So let's go on with our conversation, Daniel. After the first month of the pandemic, the market was commenting on possible alterations to the supply chain for the operations. Can you comment if there has been any impact in your operations or any measures being considered to address this black zone?
Look, at this stage, we haven't really seen an impact in the supply chain. Our business has been quite resilient. Our supply chains have remained open, and we've had adequate supplies to operate and maintain critical equipment. As you've seen from the results in the last quarter of our fiscal year, which was the April-June quarter, we had very solid results, and at Escondida, the production was up 4% in that quarter, and we had actually, ironically, record concentrator throughputs during that same quarter. But obviously, this is not short of challenges, and we've had to adapt the way we operate and take some special measures in the way to support our supply chain. We've done a lot of work to ensure that we have the right level of inventories to support us through any potential interruptions. And also, we've taken a number of actions to support our suppliers. And you may have seen the decisions we made back in March, April this year, in terms of making sure that some of our suppliers, particularly the small and medium enterprises with regional presence, we put together a program to support them to ensure that they can navigate through this very difficult period. So we created a fund to continue to pay some percentage of the people that had been demobilized to ensure that there's going to be continuity and provide some support during this very difficult situation, particularly for those companies who have more difficulties, like very small companies, regional presence, etc., etc. Having said all that, I do expect that there will be some changes in the future, and there could be some changes in the way that the international trade plays out in the future, particularly as a consequence of the economic changes and all the geopolitical, how the geopolitical landscape may change in the future. I mean, we're all witnessing all the tensions that are happening now in the world, and it's hard to forecast exactly what are going to be the actual implications. It's still early days, but we remain very vigilant as to what are the changes that this situation may cause in the global trade.
Now I would like to move to the sphere of technology and new technologies. As it's been said everywhere, that the things that were a trend before the pandemic have just accelerated through the last months. And so I think of technology in the case of mining. Can you comment on this?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, there is no doubt that the pandemic has accelerated the implementation of technology in the industry, particularly in the areas of when you try to operate with less people. To me, the pandemic has reinforced the importance of something that we knew was very, very, very relevant, which is the flexibility. And when you face challenges, the importance of flexibility is, if you have more flexibility, needless to say, you're better prepared to address that. And in regarding to that, technology has provided the advantage. So one example is what I mentioned at the beginning, that Center of Integrated Operations, which is a room that we have in our Santiago office, from which you can actually control all the different parts of the process, from the mine, to the port. That we have kept that running throughout the pandemic. And that has been much easier to control, that obviously all the transportation from people back and forth to site. The Center of Integrated Operations and other projects that we've implemented are generating a tremendous amount of data, and that data has allowed us to really drive better decision making and be able, to extract more value from our resource. Another aspect which has been quite interesting is actually what we're experiencing now, the use of technology to keep us better connected. I mean, things like, board meetings, that we've never had a board meeting in remote. And we've had a number of board meetings, in fact, way more than before, because of the power of technology. I mean, the situation, this opportunity for me to speak to different people in different parts of the world, that's something, yes, we had, of course, we did video conferences before, but has been multiplied by 10 over the last few months. And people realize that actually there is no need to travel to places to actually connect with other people. I was talking before we started earlier about this example of some of our vendors, where the technical experts have been able to actually check the function of some of the equipment remotely, sitting from their homes in Europe or in Australia or wherever, through the use of this helmet and with the camera, which is a bit like a GoPro, but a bit more sophisticated than that. And you would have never thought that that could be possible before. We had number of people coming in, moving to the flying in from whatever, everywhere in the world, going to the operations. That as people are starting to understand that there are different ways to do things. As I said at the beginning, I think that the pandemic in general has forced us to reevaluate the way we work. We've needed to prioritize and consider new ways of doing things and new technologies. And that is the best part of this, because it's really this pandemic what has shown us is that there are different ways to do things, better ways, safer ways, more efficient ways, and that's something that has really opened our eyes.
Interesting. We were forced to open our eyes, eh? Daniel, thank you. It's been an interesting conversation, and we've been receiving questions from the audience. So we will move to these. The first question that I would like to ask to you is, how has your vision around corporate citizenship evolved during this last 6 months? And do you think ESG principles have reached a new height?
No, I don't think so. I think that there are different views on ESGs, and some people suggest there will be less focus, but I don't think so. I think that this doesn't necessarily mean that there will be lost focus on that. It will be a stronger focus, in fact, on environmental and social issues. To me, ESG concerns is reflections of the what society wants. It's not something that came up from the air. It's that what society wants, and we need to respond to society. So I don't expect this movement to slow down. Within BHP, we have a very clear position on the key issues for the future of the world, such as water, climate change, etc. And these are part of our social value agenda that I mentioned at the beginning. And our conviction in these areas remain very, very strong. And this is independent of the pandemic. You may have seen our corporate purpose, which is to bring together people and resources to build a better world. And for us, this is plain and simple, good business. It is good business. We are part of a society that expects more, and we recognize that our success depends on our ability to earn the respect, trust, and the confidence of the society. We know that this means changing the way we do business across all levels, from local to global, from global to local, etc. And when we make business decisions, we take into account both, some financial decisions that are very important. We're here to create value, but also we need to consider, the social value that gets created and can come into play.
Thank you, Daniel. There is another question that we received, which I think is very interesting. And don't you think there is a giant gap between generations that is emerging right now that may impact mining activities? It seems mining is not precisely the most admired nor the employer of choice. What do you think about that?
The first thing I would say is that mining and what we do, and it's important that new generations understand that, and the world will need the resources, and it's a fundamental human activity, as old as civilization. So we need to distinguish the what with the how, okay? So we do need these resources. These resources are very important. In fact, they play a very important role in the agenda of moving into the decarbonization and moving into a cleaner world. So now in the how and what we do and how we do it, and I believe the gap you're speaking is more in the how and not so much in the what. So new generations are demanding high standards, which is fine, and particularly on sustainability. And as I mentioned earlier, this is something that we always take into account in our decision making. It's not something that you you can ignore in the way you do business. You can maybe, I mean, mining has changed significantly. I mean, for us that would be in this industry, for decades, you can see that the way we do mining is very different from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago, not even mention 20 years ago.
But why do you think then it's been so hard for mining to sort of bring closer the what to the how? Because, or I guess it's not just the fault on the mining sector only, but as an industry, it's always been a permanent challenge. Why do you think this is it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we have a pending challenge of letting society know what we do and the role we play in a greener world, and that's all we want, right? Mining, again, is fundamental to produce those resources. We need to explain people that the copper we produce is the copper that gets used in all these renewable plants. It's the copper that gets used in the production of electric cars. It's the copper that gets used in all the infrastructure associated to a more sustainable world. I think the industry has made significant advances in terms of the focusing on the things that really impact the environment. But you're right. I mean, I think that we still have a pending task, so to speak, with the society to explain that better. We need to communicate better what we do. We need to tell our story better. We're very passionate in the industry, as you know, about mining and the progress we've made, but we need to do a better job in communicating that passion to the next generation of employees. We normally have these conversations with the young generations. They're quite critical about many of these things.
Yeah, but they love their mobiles and all the technology that they use. So maybe there's a chance there. And also, I think COVID also brings a chance in terms of human health and the role of copper. Down in the value chain of copper, I guess there's a chance too, right in this moment. Another question that I have to ask is that recently, different Chilean government agencies have been questioning the mining sector in relation to continental water extraction. This has been the case for Escondida and also other mining companies. Are you relieved of having dropped continental water resources?
More than relieved, I'm happy and I'm proud of this decision, and I'm really proud about our ability to foresee this coming. The decision to stop extracting water from the high Andean aquifers is a consequence of how we plan for the future. It is a result of a sustained investment that we've made over $4 billion over the last 15 years to actually create desalination capacity for both Escondida and Spence. And I'm going back to your previous question. It's a great example of how the industry has evolved. I remember in 2006 when BHP commissioned the first desalination plant, that was put in operation at Escondida. Some people thought we were crazy. Why would you doing that? What are you doing that? I mean, back then in the mid 2000s, this was not really an issue. So I think that standard and requirements change over time, as they should, and our duty is to make these transitions with careful planning, So I'm very proud of what we've done. But again, not only about the outcome, but about the way we went through this transition. We need to anticipate the expectations from society, which are rising, and prepare to move ourselves as an industry in response to those expectations. I think our progress in water has been fantastic, to be honest. I mean, if you look back 15 years ago when we were essentially sourcing 100% of groundwater, and essentially, now we're relying almost entirely, and when the SGO plant comes online, entirely, almost on 2 years' time, we will be relying entirely on desalinated water. I mean, it's been a long transition, more than 10 years in the making, but we're very, very happy. As we're very happy also with the transitions we've made in power. Again, if you look back, 10 years ago, probably, as we were relying on coal-fired plants, and today was just announced, last week. That was the last step into moving into fully renewable sources. And for us, it's quite a challenge because we as BHP consumes, quite a lot of power. I think we represent close to 6 or 7% of the grid in this country, and having 100% of renewable power in operation from the middle of this decade, it's going to be a remarkable achievement. These two examples, again, are good examples of our foresight to anticipate the changes in the world we operate. We need to constantly change and challenge ourselves and try to understand what the expectations from the society.
Very interesting. And Daniel, with the renewable powers, can you comment a little bit on what are you expecting in this sort of ability to anticipate change in terms of the electrification of the mine in the future or near future? Do you expect to have electric trucks, or you replace the engines by electric engines in other processes? Can you comment on that?
Yes. So you're talking about perhaps you refer to the automation of the mine and things like that, or you're talking about the...
Yeah, and the use of electric power instead of the traditional engines used right now, which has, of course, an impact on emissions.
Yeah, so as you know, emissions are comprised of the three types of emissions, what they call Scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 is what we generate inside the fence, so to speak.
Yes.
And this is highly dominated, yes, by the fuel that gets used by our mobile equipment. Scope 2 is essentially the indirect, but associated to and that has been largely addressed by the transition into these renewable sources. And source 3 is the rest of the value chain, which is also something that we are addressing, and it will be you will see that in the results of BHP next week. In terms of Scope 1, which happens inside the fence, we are looking at ways to do that. We've been working on ways, first, to reduce the fuel consumed by our trucks, going into more efficient trucks, going into try to supplement that with other elements that may help us to reduce. Things like trolley assist, which is a very old technology, but it's something that may help to reduce the consumption of fuel in our mines. And other elements, we are, as you know, with other companies testing, the use of hydrogen in some areas of our operations. So we are looking at different ways to try to reduce the Scope 1 emissions, which are the ones that happen inside the fence. Also the transition, and we are starting to move also into transition to see if automated trucks may work. And that also will imply probably a much efficient use of fuel compared to manned vehicles. So yes, we're working in different fronts. I don't think there's a silver bullet for that. I think that you need to work from different fronts and try to address this problem with some of the technological solutions that are out there.
Thank you. Very interesting. I would like to move on to comment the poll results before we go on with some questions that we've received. So there we see, if you recall, the question was, will COVID-19 push national governments to make conditions more attractive for foreign investment in mining, or impose higher social environmental regulations due to increase sustainability demands? Danny, can you comment on these results? They're very related to what we've been talking in the last minutes, I guess.
Yeah, look, I guess my My hunch is that the answer to both questions is yes. I think that yes, there will be more, there will be, or governments will try to make conditions more attractive for investment, but I don't think that that will be done at the expense of relaxing the social environmental regulations. That this is something that has started. I mean, this is a trend that is already ongoing, and I don't think that that will get interrupted by COVID-19. I think that it's absolutely possible and compatible to have both, to have good economic development and to have good standards. It's only a matter of how these standards are well thought through, and there is enough time for transition, and there is enough time, and also there is a foster innovation to come up with solutions that will make these changes into more sustainable solutions, something that it also creates financial value. I mean, the example that we have here in Chile in terms of the solar energy is the best example of all. I mean, probably 10 years ago, and I include myself in that, I mean, no one thought that you could actually source your energy from solar sources and could be competitive against, coal-fired or gas-fired plants. Today, as we've seen, that's perfectly possible. So you can actually have that dual objective of creating economic value, but at the same time doing that in a very sustainable manner. So I think that yes, governments would definitely try to stimulate activity. I mean, we've all seen the impacts of this pandemic in the global economy, in the local economy, etc. But I think that as I said before, I think that these so-called ESG demands are not ESG demands, are the demands of the society. At the end of the day, the society is the one that actually invests in these funds, and the society wants a different world. The new generations want a different world, and we need to respond to that. We need to have, though, a proper transition, and we need to foster innovation for that change to happen.
Well, related to innovation, I would like to ask you the last question of this session that came from Pamela Valdivia. And she says, despite or thanks to the critical moment, are you open to work with high-tech startups on some of your challenges towards a mining 4.0?
Absolutely, and we have a number of initiatives underway in different areas. You may have seen, for instance, the launch we made about 4-6 weeks ago to really try to look for longer-term solutions to tailings, which is a massive issue we have in this industry. We have some work underway, as I said before, to test, hydrogen in some parts of our operations. We are looking in different areas, and we're using different mechanisms and associations with different companies to do so. In fact, we've just some months ago, we have created a new area in the company based out of Australia, which is called New Ventures, in which we'll be looking for this sort of association in things that may help us to actually improve our efficiency and our productivity and our mines in a sustainable manner. So there's a number of examples of that, the work that we do with Fundación Chile in many areas as well. So we have a number of examples in that direction.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, thank you for joining us today. My takeaways of this conversation have to do with the importance of flexibility and how technology is aiding that path. Also, the opportunity to reevaluate the way work is being done. I guess that is a thing that is very welcome in our industry. And also the fact that operational continuity is absolutely compatible with health and safety of workers. So thank you again, Daniel, for your time. I also want to thank the around of 200 attendees that we had in this session today. And we look forward to meeting you again in the near future. Bye, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.